As we know that the agriculture sector in the BIMSTEC region is growing very fast, contributing to the whole process of development in most of the countries. As such, BIMSTEC regional economies are mostly dependent on agriculture. Still, there are difficulties, challenges in terms of food security, nutritional security, and also the major challenge is linked to modernization of agriculture. Very often we see that there is supply disruption in many regional economies leading to serious problems. So in that situation, particularly in the sector of agriculture, where the demand is instant, short-term gap can be addressed through international trade. And as such, without any notice, we have seen that agriculture has thrived in this region, particularly in the trade sector. And that has really supported policymakers in terms of implementing food security in the region. But still, there are many gaps that we have seen in the past. In many countries, food problem cropped off. Despite intense trade in the agriculture sector, still the region is having serious problems related to food security and nutrition security. Without taking much time, I would now invite Dr. Mamta Pradhan to present her welcome address. I would like to say that Dr. Pradhan is an accomplished researcher and program coordinator. She has got tremendous understanding and work in the area of demand side of social programs on food safety net, public distribution system in India. She has been quite some time with International Food Research Institute based in New Delhi chapter of the organization. She is involved in large-scale multi-state and multi-stakeholders projects, mostly focused on nutritional security. She worked on mapping power and the network, very closely associated with the South Asian region, particularly coordinating different institutions in the region. She also developed a kind of integrated framework for trade, investment and food security, particularly in the BIMSTEC region. She also, through various projects, tried to experiment number of studies and also impact assessment studies. She also very closely associated with the plights of small-scale farmers in the region. I just welcome her.
Thank you, Professor Mohanty. That was very kind words describing my not so great accomplishments, but it's good to hear from a professor, Good morning, and I hope everybody had a good breakfast. I don't see smiles on your faces, so can you just loudly say good morning? Okay. Not Bam, just say Mamta. That should be okay. Respected Mr. Tandon, Ambassador Mr. Tandon, then we have Dr. Pankuri from RIS. It's my honor and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this capacity building program on BIMSTEC regional agriculture trade analysis on behalf of International Food Policy Research Institute and RIS. At the outset, let me be very, very categorical that a capacity building that is mentioned here is kind of a misplaced term. We will be truest if we call it as capacity partnership. So this partnership is pivoted on three interrelated and intertwined pillars. One is collaborative research. Second is, of course, capacity building, or I'll call it as capacity strengthening or partnership, and policy engagement. So focusing on agri-food trade, which is an area of work with exceptionally high potential, but probably also the most underperforming in the area of multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation. So, most of you must have been aware of, Prime Minister Mr. Modi in the recent BIMSTEC summit, he emphasized that to enhance our mutual trade, it is necessary to make speedy progress on the proposal of BIMSTEC FTA. We should enhance exchanges between the entrepreneurs and startups of our countries. At the same time, we should also try to adopt international norms in the field of trade facilitation. This will help in promoting intra-BIMSTEC trade and economic integration. So underlining this goal is the need for thorough understanding of the way trade relations work and have been kind of evolving over these years. So the prior of analysis or even the policy making that we are talking about in agri-food trade, for realizing the full potential for agri-food trade would not work, mind my words, would not work in the form of old wine in a new bottle. So no pun intended. So the need is a new wine and a new, rather transformed bottle. So in these times of globalized value chain, while before I was talking with Ambassador Mr. Tandon, and the industrialization of food that has happened, we need to really buckle up and understand the agri-food systems in the context of trade. This is just natural intelligence. There is no artificial intelligence. So in the course of this interaction, what I want to really put forth is that the most important objective will be how do we gel this capacity into collaborative research output. So that's our whole objective of this capacity strengthening workshop. So in the course of 2 days, we want to revise, we'll also update the landscape of agri-food trade that speaks to the process of policy making and policy thinking. We do hope, that's our humble endeavor, that we will be able to lay the foundation for all methods and data that are really mandated with food system thinking and the changing contours of agri-food trade. We'll look at both formal and also informal trade. We'll look at aggregated as well as disaggregated data. We'll look at trade patterns. We'll look at trade policies and with different nodes. So when it comes to trade, the world is not very flat, So you have to understand the slopes, you have to understand and strive to make it so that the first stop is in terms of data and methods of understanding where this engagement is being headed. So I'll conclude by, just giving you two facts that historically there were two waves of globalization. Can anybody say when was that? There were two waves of globalizations. Okay, it happened between 1820 to 1914 and from 1960 till now. So in each period, if you have read the history, there was this whole large increase in the aggregate trade and capital flows, both in absolute terms as well as share of the total world income. However, there are fundamental differences between these two waves of globalization. First, unlike the first wave, the second wave was accompanied by flows of ideas as well as goods. The second, before the initial wave, the whole world was poor and agrarian, and the relative wealth of nations was relatively homogeneous. Now through the third wave, which our training aspires, again is the flow of ideas. So with that, let me conclude by saying that let there be free trade of ideas and thoughts in the next 2 days. With that, thank you so much and a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you, ma'am, for delineating the objectives of the capacity building program so succinctly and with such precision. It is now time for the inaugural address by Professor V. Geeta Lakshmi, who is currently the Vice Chancellor of the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, Coimbatore. She will be joining us online. But before that, a brief mention about her accolades. She is the 14th Vice Chancellor of the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, and she is a specialist in agriculture metrology and an internationally acclaimed climatologist who has served in the university for more than 32 years in various capacities, including as Professor and Head of Agro-Climate Research Center, Director Crop Management. She has undergone post-doctoral trainings in the fields of weather forecasting, climate modeling, climate change, and climate resilient technological development in the renowned international institutes in Australia, UK, US, Israel, and Japan. She has established research collaborations with 40 premier institutions across 5 continents across the world and has successfully completed 23 external agency funded research projects worth rupees 59 crores. She has also developed 8 management technologies and has published more than 120 research papers in peer-reviewed journals and has authored around 11 books. She has been conferred with Fellow of Agrometrology Award by the Association of Agrometrology and has contributed in developing the Tamil Nadu State Action Plan on Climate Change. She has presented Tamil Nadu drought policy in the high-level meeting on national drought policy at WMO in Geneva. And of course, the accolades don't end here. She has bagged around 21 awards and recognitions, including Science City's Best Women Scientist Award, DST Award for Women's Development, Shakti Media Award, etc. So after enlisting her accolades, I would now like to invite Professor V. Geeta Lakshmi to give us the inaugural address.
Indeed, it's my privilege to be here today for the inaugural session of the Capacity Building Program on BIMSTEC Regional Agricultural Trade Analysis. I'm glad to have this opportunity to distinguish the gathering of faculty, researchers, scientists, and research scholars from different national and international organizations. I compliment the organizers for this great initiative. We are in the era of globalization, where different countries across the globe trade goods and services. As international trade has grown, the economics of different countries have become reliant on exports and good international relations, and many supply chains also rely on raw material from different countries. Some of the largest and most successful global companies have managed to build a strong customer base by understanding different trends in supply and demand across the world. Trade plays a crucial role in countries' economic development. However, in the recent years, international trade has come across several challenges, including COVID-19 pandemic, political tension between China and the USA, the war in Ukraine, and the impact of climate crisis on raw materials. Coming to the international trade, it has direct impact on environment and climate change. It is estimated that about 90% of the world's trade is transported by sea and shipping. Everyone knows this, and it is responsible for about 3% of the global carbon emissions. The aviation industry is also recognized as contributing by 2.5% of all global carbon emissions. So the sea trade is contributing to 3%, but the air trading is contributing to 2.5% of the global carbon emission. The shipping industry is committed to a total decarbonization by 2050, and similarly, the aviation sector has pledged to become net zero by 2050. However, the focus is not just on carbon. The demand for agricultural commodities put pressure on the Earth's natural resources. For example, demand for food products such as palm oil, coconuts, and avocados, in the supply chain, they increases the air freight and create higher prices in the local market. This causes soil degradation when intensive farming methods are used. Intensive farming also disseminates insects and wildfire due to the use of pesticides and fertilizers, which has a knockdown effect on entire ecosystem. When pesticides and fertilizer, they enter into the water system, they can also enter into the biosphere in the future. The World Bank believes that fighting climate change is vital to equitable global environment and poverty reduction, and that international trade can have an important role to play in this endeavor. The report on the trade and climate change nexus, the urgency and opportunities for developing countries from the World Bank in the year 2021, this discussed the climate change and future trade opportunities in the developing countries. Coming to climate change, it represents a severe, perseverance and potential irreversible threat to the people and also to the ecosystem, public health, infrastructure and to the global economy. Climate change is reshaping the country's economic and trade prospects, and it is a major threat to the future growth and also the prosperity. Higher temperatures, rising sea levels and more frequent extreme weather events bring the prospects of productivity losses, production shortages and damages in transport infrastructure and also the supply disruptions. Without significant reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions, many countries are likely to find their comparative advantages in changing with agriculture, tourism and also with some manufacturing sector particularly vulnerable to climate impacts. Developing countries in particular, especially the small islands, they are the most vulnerable ones. So they need to take extra care on the changing climatic condition. Agriculture, tourism and some manufacturing sectors are particularly vulnerable to climate change. Agriculture is the most exposed and vulnerable sector to the changes in the temperature and precipitation, raising serious concerns about future food security. Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia are expected to experience larger adverse agricultural yield shocks than other regions. Given their high share of agricultural employment, they may face more severe labor market disruptions. Change in climate might also reduce the touristic appeal for long-favored destinations, while sea level rise and extreme weather events could permanently damage tourism infrastructure. Manufacturing sector depends on climate sensitivities, inputs such as food processing, and also it could suffer from reduced access to raw material. Labor-intensive production could also be adversely affected as rising temperatures diminish capacity to work and raise risk of accidents and heat exhaustions. Leveraging trade to tackle climate change presents several development and growth opportunities and will require significant policy actions to advance a just transition towards a low carbon, inclusive of resilient future. Coming to the World Trade Report 2022 from the World Trade Organization, this addresses the issues relating to climate change and international trade. The 2022 World Trade Report explores the complex interlinkages between climate change and international trade, revealing how international trade and trade rules can be contributing to addressing the climate change. It looks at how international trade might exacerbate climate change, how the consequences of climate change might alter trading patterns and relationships, and also how trade could be a force multiplier for the global response to the climate crisis. The report also spells out various ways international trade cooperation fostered by the WTO could support and lower the cost of implementing the Paris Agreement and fulfilling the Glasgow Climate Global Net Zero GHG emission by mid-century especially. The report core message is clear. Trade is a critical point of leverage for transforming the global economy and putting the planet on the sustainable trajectory. Trade can reduce the cost of mitigation and speed up the low carbon transition and the creation of green jobs. Through trade, like most current economically active greenhouse gas emission, it is also contributing to reducing them by enabling access to cutting-edge climate technologies. Especially, the trade and value chain have been major factors in the dramatic fall in the cost of greening, solar and wind energy, with also renewable energy now cheaper than the fossil alternative. Trade and trade policies are also part of our sound strategy for climate change adaptation, helping individual countries, especially vulnerable in developing ones such as small island developing countries, least developed countries, and landlocked developing countries, better respond to and protect themselves from extreme weather events, and in the long term to adjust to shifts in agricultural productivity and changes in wider international competitiveness. Climate change is a problem of global common. Markets do not suffice to address these threats from greenhouse gas accumulation in the atmosphere because firms and consumers often do not directly face the cost of emissions as they do. To correct these market failures, carefully constructed climate change mitigation policies and need to intensify behavioral changes and increase investment in energy efficiency and climate-friendly technologies. Greenhouse gas mitigation policies, they face a wide range of challenges, including conflicting economic and developing priorities. So COVID-19 pandemic, actually, they raised inflections in the inflationary pressures, increase in food security challenges, and also the war in Ukraine have added further. Adapting to climate change is a sustainable development imperative. Without understanding how costly and disruptive adaptation will continue to be, trade can make an important contribution to climate risk prevention. Reduction and preparedness also could happen. Trade can facilitate the development and deployment of pro-adaptation technologies such as climate resilient crop varieties, early warning systems, water conservation, storage systems, all these things. By fostering high economic growth, trade can generate additional financial resources to invest in adaptation strategies such as climate resilient infrastructure. Trade openness also allows for wider access to services that help prepare for climate-related shocks such as weather forecasting, insurance, telecommunications, transportations, logistics, and health services. I hope this workshop deliberations will help in understanding the knowledge issues related to trade, tools for trade policy analysis, and regional trade issues, particularly with respect to Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral, technical, and economic cooperations. Having gained here, I would like to advise all of you to continue your work on trade issues with mutual interactions and collaborations. I wish you all good luck for your endeavors. Thank you very much for the great opportunity given.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightening remarks. They highlight the profound implications of the contemporary dynamics between climate change, trade, and human development with overarching acuteness. I would now like to invite Professor S.K. Mohanty for his special remarks.
Again, good morning, everybody. Ambassador Rudendra Tandon, Dr. Mamta Pradhan, Dr. B. Geeta Lakshmi, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I would like to say that despite the entire South Asian region is an agrarian economy, still there is considerable level of protection existing in this region. It is not because that the agriculture sector is contributing a huge part of our to our GDP, but because of substantial part of our labor force engaged in this sector. And that is the reason very few countries in Asia are becoming part of the cranes group in the WTO. India and many other countries have not really joined the cranes group because of this fact. Nearly 60-70% of India's workforce is engaged in the agriculture sector. So if it is liberalized to a very large extent, then definitely it may affect livelihood security. And that has been the similar concerns with most of the South Asian countries. Now, what is the problem in the region? The central problem in the agriculture sector is about the stagnancy in the productivity. In many regional economies, in many crops, we find that the productivity is a major problem. And despite of serious efforts made by individual countries, individually and jointly through various groupings, still that is becoming a major constraint in many areas. Particularly in the area of fats and oil, vegetable oils, it is a major problem for the region. In certain areas, the region is quite good, but in certain areas, it is not the case. So, the immediate challenge is about the food security and nutrient security within the region. The question is how to address this issue. Naturally, as Dr. Gita Lakshmi mentioned, that we can have sweeping reforms in the region, in the domestic policies to address the production system in the economy. But at the same time, short-term or medium-term shortages in food, particularly food grains, can be addressed through regional trade. But it is important that how best we can augment regional trade in agriculture is a major issue. And as we know that agriculture is not a homogeneous product. It is having several segments. If you look at a trade classification, you have animal and animal products, you have fruits and vegetables, you have got fats and oil, processed food, and within that you have the cereal, pulses, beverages. So if you can't count them, agriculture is highly heterogeneous, and therefore it is very important to understand that what major products which are being traded in the region and competitiveness of individual countries in this system. Now, in the recent years, serious discussions are on the sustainable agriculture or greening the agriculture. Besides that, smart and climate resilient agriculture is also quite important for the growth of the agrarian sector in the region. Now, the question is about the production and the trade, and when we talk about production, reaching the level of output for consumption within the region and for the trade, there are new evidences we get from the global economy. We must have read Kuznets hypothesis, where we have learned that there is a typical transition from agriculture to manufacturing industry and industry to services. But many countries have not seen such transition. Country like India transit from agriculture to services bypassing the manufacturing sector. That is a major concern at a later stage. So the shrinking of the agriculture sector is imminent, which is mostly discussed by Kuznets, but the reversal of this process happening in most of the developed countries. Of course, the same question of productivity challenges are there with the developed countries, but they have tried to reduce food waste, and also they have more utilization of same production base for more processed food, and that's how they have made value addition at each stages of a production of a goods, and ultimately one can see that the overall value added of the sector has been growing over the years, not only in the physical terms, but in terms of relative terms, it is going fast. So therefore, with value chain sector emphasis, I think we can improve the value addition of the agriculture sector to a very large extent. In this context, regional value chain and is very much important in terms of bringing transition within the region. And regional value chain is also another instrument which can be realized through interregional trade. Silently, we have seen that in the agriculture sector, the agriculture trade has gone up rapidly as compared to other sectors in the BIMSTEC region. As we know that BIMSTEC was formed in 1997, there is not much trade with the region to a very large extent. But in recent years, we see phenomenal growth in the trade in the agriculture sector, and that is the major area where it is growing. Now, when it's a question of a value addition, you can see that in any product, from minimally processed food to high level of processing and ultra foods, deep processing foods, that has been the entire length of the food chain in the agriculture sector. The return of trade is always from the high-end products of any production segment. So what we have seen that there is surge in the production of processed and deep processed food. But important aspect is that production in these areas, high-end products of the agriculture sector, is also subject to various types of non-tariff barriers. So the challenges to the agriculture sector within the region and outside the region is enormous. So at least we can resolve our problems in the domestic region, and that's why at last summit, Prime Minister emphasized on regional value chain in the agriculture sector, which can really drive the entire growth process of the region through trade, particularly through agricultural trade. In the current G20 presidency of India, again the emphasis is on sustainable, climate resilient agriculture. So new challenges is that the sector is quite big and also booming, but it requires huge number of manpower in the region. And the objective of this event is to see that how best we can generate new generation of scientists in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the special remarks. I would now like to invite Professor Gurmeet Singh, Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University. Professor Gurmeet Singh is a renowned academic administrator and an internationally reputed expert in the field of corrosion science and smart materials, and is currently serving as the Chancellor of Pondicherry University. Vice Chancellor. During 2011 and 2012, Professor Singh served as Chair Professor at Lungbao University, Taipei, where he was specially invited to start collaborative research. He was a visiting scientist to Hungary and Japan and has been on academic assignments to Germany, Italy, Australia, Singapore, Korea, Thailand, and Kenya. He is also currently a visiting professor at Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Ishikawa in Japan. With about 150 research papers, of which a majority are in high-impact international journals, Professor Gurmeet Singh is also among the most cited of the scientists in this field. An oft-decorated academician, Professor Singh has received, among other honors, the Meritorious Contribution Award, the Annapurna Award, membership of the Royal Society of Chemistry, London, and Fellowship of SAEST and the Electrochemical Society of India. So, sir, I invite you to give a special address.
Well, I am delighted to be here in the presence of our Ambassador, Mr. Rotendra Tandon, Additional Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Dr. Mamta Pradhan, who is the research coordinator here, and Professor S.K. Mohanty, who is here and who interacted with us yesterday in fair bit of details with our faculty, and Pankuri Gaur, who is also here in connection with this, and all other dignitaries who are around for this program, which is on capacity building for BIMSTEC Regional Agricultural Trade Analysis. Yesterday when we were having our interaction with the faculty, probably the staff which has come from RIS would have been very thrilled to know that remarkable work which our faculty is doing in different research areas. But what was probably lacking in my own opinion was that a lack of confidence on the part of administrators for our university staff that, well, these are the people who can really deliver. But then the heartening feature is that of late, particularly in the last 5 years, there is enough confidence building that yes, university staff, if we interact, can really deliver whatever they are looking forward to. And that is the result which is very obvious in a variety of areas. You look at ITs, how well we have done it. You look at our solar energy research. You look at our solar energy devices that we are doing. All this, if you look at 3 years back where we were, just 3 years back, and where are we now? So there is a rapid progress in all the fields, and with the help of RAS, I am sure that this cooperation is going to be taken further. When we look at the regional agricultural trade analysis, one would go in for trade with a country which is doing well, which is on its own feet, which is making rapid progress. And in the area of agriculture sector, when you look at, I will take you back to mid-60s. That was the time we were importing food, and under PL 480 program from US and Australia, the food grains which were imported were being distributed. From that state onwards, what way we have progressed, I think I'll not have time to develop on that. But then we have really done extremely well that there was a target set that if India can achieve, if we can achieve this much in the next 10 years, I think it will be a great achievement. But then, let me tell you, the point I'm trying to highlight is that 10-year span which was given, we achieved that in 4 years. Then we moved on from that point onwards, and now what we are doing, what we are producing, it is for everybody to see that we produce so much of food grains that in the need of an emergency for our neighbors or anywhere else, we are the first ones who will come forward to help. Not only in agricultural, in all other areas. We have seen during COVID, when vaccines were needed, we were the first ones, we went ahead. when there was a recent 3-4 days back when we had the earthquake, terrible earthquake in Turkey and Syria. If you have followed the international relations, we were not having very pleasant relations, and in all the international forum, my diplomat friend will tell that we were not getting what we were expecting. But then, the moment this happened, we were one of the first ones who sent aid to these countries, not only in small measures, in umpteen measure. Doctor, medical team, whatever, our disaster management teams went there. So we are in that position now where if anybody would look at it in a very fair manner, they will say that yes, this country is doing very well. And a fair bit of credit should go to our academicians, our academics. And this is further augmented when we look at a collaboration between various agencies and universities now of late. And I am delighted that RIS came here. They held a meeting. They held discussions with our academics. Yesterday we had, as I said, we had very fruitful discussion. And I am sure it is going to be carried forward in the best possible manner. I was also making a point yesterday. I was addressing a seminar on law and another seminar on our IT issues. I said one starts enjoying the profession, one starts doing very well if you start enjoying the profession. And there was a time when we were thinking that political science, law, these are the ones which are dead departments. They are, nothing else is needed in this, and so very few were opting for this. But of late we have seen that these are very departments which are changing every day, and these are very evolving subjects. And when we look at it, the way our departments in the universities are moving forward, it is leading to our international standing in a much better, improved manner. And that's what our External Affairs Minister a few weeks back said in some of the international forum, that there is a new axiom given to foreign policy now. That foreign policy axiom is that whatever we do, we will do in our interest, and that's about it. So I am glad that we have now started on regional agricultural trade analysis. Once we do that, through these analyses we'll come to know what is required, what is needed, where exactly we have to lay more emphasis on. All these issues, when we deliberate and decide on, I think we are in for a wonderful time. And the most important thing, that everything has to be optimized, and that optimization shall result out of meetings of this kind, workshops of this kind, where I was going through the program sheet, where there is a statistical analysis also of many problems, which is needed, which up till now was not taken up very seriously. So all these issues taken together in a meeting of this kind would certainly take us far enough where it will be in the interest of everyone. And when I say everyone in the world now has started respecting our country, that we mean cooperation, we mean coexistence, we mean peace for everybody, and that's ultimately what is needed. If everybody thinks on those lines, I think the world will be a better place to live in. I am delighted that RIS has taken this initiative to come here and to organize this regional trade analysis workshop. I am certain of the success of this, and it will give a right direction to our young researchers, young academicians, young minds, and will lead to wonderful collaboration. I wish this a grand success, and I express my deep sense of gratitude to the entire team for taking this initiative and holding it here. This is one place where you come even for a day. It is very rejuvenating, very spiritual, very positive, and the moment you are in the boundaries of Pondicherry, some kind of a special energy sets into your mind and body, and you tend to do very well. I am sure this is going to be the result of this workshop here as well. So all the very best, and God bless all of us. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Rudra Tandon, who is Additional Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Ambassador Tandon is now in charge of BIMSTEC and South Asia. The entire program of India is driven by his initiatives. He is a career diplomat, and he is into several portfolios, several feathers to his cap. He was earlier ambassador to Afghanistan, and before that he was Indian envoy to ASEAN Secretariat. His long career started from 1994, and I say he has a very special affection or passionation for Afghanistan. I think when he started his career, he began in the initial periods. He worked in as a very new young diplomat. Worked in, and then when he grew, again he went to Afghanistan, and ultimately became the ambassador when Afghanistan was in a very critical stage. In 2020, he was India's envoy to Afghanistan. So, is also a trained economist. So, he understands the whole trade scenario well, and I request him to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you. Well, Professor Gurmeet Singh, Vice Chancellor, Professor Mohanty, Dr. Pradhan, Dr. Gore. First of all, thank you very much, RIS and IFRI, for inviting me for this inaugural address. Whatever else I am not an economist. I may be a student of economics, but I never reached the level of economic knowledge to make me call myself an economist, which is a much more difficult thing to be. Distinguished participants, I hope to use this occasion to give you a sense of what is happening on the BIMSTEC platform that is mentioned here, and how it relates to the capacity building program that you are going to undertake today and tomorrow. At the last BIMSTEC summit in Sri Lanka, March 2022, BIMSTEC leaders signed and adopted the BIMSTEC Charter. What this represents is the transformation, the culmination of a process that began several years ago, that transformed this grouping of countries who are littoral to or dependent upon the Bay of Bengal from a mere grouping into a full-fledged regional organization of the Bay of Bengal. BIMSTEC now has a permanent secretariat in Dhaka. It has dedicated staff led by a Secretary General from Bhutan currently. It has a whole series of dialogue structures, starting from dialogue at the summit level, going through to foreign minister level, senior officials, and national focal points like myself. In other words, the short point for all of you who tomorrow will become policy makers is to know that BIMSTEC now is a ready-made machinery that is available for taking policy action at the regional level. At the same summit in Sri Lanka, Prime Minister also announced India's decision to commission RIS to undertake a comprehensive study on trade in value-added agricultural produce with the objective of ultimately identifying actions and interventions at the policy level that could be undertaken on a BIMSTEC-wide basis so as to stimulate the greater volumes in agricultural trade in the region, but also stimulate the creation of agricultural value chains. Since agriculture is the backbone of the economies of all BIMSTEC member states, and all governments in these BIMSTEC countries face the same problem of finding ways to boost incomes of the farmers, you can imagine the support that Prime Minister's initiative received from other BIMSTEC leaders. Simultaneously, at the Sri Lanka summit, the Prime Minister announced a second initiative. The Prime Minister said that India would support a special capacity building program targeting BIMSTEC trade officials, but focused in the area of trade facilitation. This was rooted in an idea that is now commonly accepted, that in this era, when businesses are unbundling their production processes over wide geographies, including across international boundaries, so as to harness competitive advantages, it is issues like trade facilitation, investment protection, tackling the non-tariff barriers, which is the route to boosting trade and influencing patterns, and not the traditional issue of tariff schedules. Any trade negotiator will tell you that in this era, tariffs are a very minor determinant of trade volumes and trade patterns, because a producer ultimately merely passes on the burden of the tariff to his client. But the thing that really drives trade patterns is the issue of facilitation measures that are available, and also other things like investment protection and non-tariff barrier issues. This initiative also received overwhelming support from other BIMSTEC leaders. So you who are embarking on this program should know that the ecosystem in which you will be contemplating your policy is coming into place, and trade facilitation for agriculture produce is very much there on the agenda of BIMSTEC member states. Indeed, if we do manage to improve this trade facilitation standards in the BIMSTEC region, at least to the level of the WTO convention standards, which all except Bhutan are signatories, you will open up great scope for agricultural trade. And this really brings me to the end of what I had to say about BIMSTEC. But before I conclude, I have one last point to make. And this is as a bureaucrat and a member of the universe of policymakers, and it is really addressed to you who are scholars, academics, and think tanks who belong to a separate universe, who contemplate policy matters. In events like these that I have attended in the past, I have come across policy recommendations that are very good in theory, but very difficult to implement in practice. One of the lessons economic policy makers have learned is that the toughest thing about economic policy is not mastering the economy, it is mastering the political economy. This principle perhaps applies even more strongly in the area of agriculture policy making. It is not agriculture that you have to master. It is the political economy that goes with the agriculture sector that you have to master to make good policy. My only advice is that you should aim for modesty when making policy. Usually it is the modest policy, the simple ones, that when implemented over a long period of time give you or yield you the maximum results. The only problem with modest and practical policy interventions is that they will not get you the news headlines that we all crave for. But I'm almost absolutely sure that in the long run, it is only through these small, modest, and practical interventions in the agricultural sector that governments will be able to deliver on their promise to the farmers to raise their incomes and improve the quality of their lives. So thank you once again, RIS, and thank you once again, IFRI, for having me here, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for contextualizing the interlinkages between trade, geopolitics, and international policy making, especially in the BIMSTEC region. Now I would like to invite Dr. Mamta Pradhan to present a bouquet of appreciation and gratitude to Ambassador Tandon. Now it's time for the book release. The title of the book, BIMSTEC, Mapping Sub-Regionalism in Asia. Now this is a book edited by Professor A. Raju and Dr. Ansuya Ray Chaudhary. Professor A. Subramaniam Raju is currently serving as the Dean International Relations at the Pondicherry University. He joined the Pondicherry University in April 2009 in the Center for South Asian Studies as the reader and is currently serving as the professor and head of UMI SARC and Center for South Asian Studies. He also heads the Madanjeet Singh Chair and UGC Center for Maritime Studies at the Pondicherry University. Furthermore, he is the coordinator of the UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador. His main areas of specialization include maritime security affairs, energy security, non-traditional security, South Asia regional cooperation, India-Sri Lanka, US-India, and he has more than 65 publications to his credit. So I now request Professor A. Raju to please come.
It's my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks in this inaugural session. Foremost, I would like to thank Ambassador Tandon for highlighting the issues like trade facilitation, investment and NTBs to boost the agriculture trade in BIMSTEC. I would also like to thank Professor Gurmeet Singh for inspiring the participants and encouraging them to actively participate in the program. Professor Geeta Lakshmi for addressing the climate related issues in agriculture and telling about the new issues that we are facing in the agriculture sector. I would also like to thank DG RIS Professor Sachin Chaturvedi for his continuous support and guidance in this program. A special thanks to Professor Raju and his students at the Pondicherry University for helping us in so many ways that I cannot count right now. Dr. Pradhan and IFPRI team for jointly conducting this program and supporting us. RIS team headed by Professor Mohanty, which would, I think we would not be able to organize this capacity building program in this short time. Lastly, I would also like to thank all the participants and wish a knowledge gaining and interactive session in the next 2 coming days. Thank you so much.